Mr. Chairman, and thanks to both of you for being here today, and thank you for your service and all you do for our country. I certainly appreciate and respect the fact that, as you acknowledged in your opening statements, it isn't possible for you to be all things to all people. It's not possible for you to be anywhere in the world within notice of only a few minutes, and we need to keep that in mind as we look at this sad, unfortunate situation. We also recognize the concern that you have for U.S. personnel everywhere around and respect what you do for them. I do want to follow up a little bit on some of the questions that Senator Graham was asking a few minutes ago. Secretary Panetta, a few minutes ago you indicated that we didn't have boots on the ground. We didn't deploy forces because the attack came to an end. But as Senator Graham pointed out, this is an attack that lasted nearly 8 hours from start to finish. So at some point there had to have been a decision made not to deploy them. At what point in that time frame was it made, or was it not made until after the attack had ended, nearly 8 hours after it began?
Senator, again, just to bring you back to the events as they took place, there was this initial attack on the facility at Benghazi. Within an hour or so, that ended. And very frankly, we thought that was the end of what had occurred there. And we had no intelligence that a second attack would take place at the annex 2 miles away.
But we didn't know. We didn't know. And what we did know is that a lot of people were still unaccounted for. So, no. So the immediate attack was perhaps not visibly underway, but you weren't certain that there wouldn't be more fighting.
You know, obviously you're not certain about what may or may not happen, but the issue of whether or not you suddenly deploy, you know, a platoon or a team into an area, you still have to determine whether or not the situation that's there requires the deployment of that force there. And frankly, when we were told that the attack was over, you know, we immediately, you know, although we had the forces in place, we would have responded if something, you know, had indicated more. We had no intelligence to indicate that that was the case.
Okay, and at what point, to what point are you referring right now? You're talking about the initial attack on the compound.
That's correct.
So was that decision revisited hours later when in the early hours of the morning, Benghazi time, another pretty considerable attack came about?
Let me make sure. I think once the attack occurred, we started moving forces. It didn't matter really whether there was another attack. We were moving the forces, and as they were moving, we would direct them where they were needed. I actually thought they would likely be needed in Tripoli, but they were moving, and nothing we did slowed that process down.
Did they get to Tripoli?
They did. They're there now.
And did why didn't they move forward to Benghazi?
There was no need to do it by the time they got there.
How did you know there was no need to do it?
Because everybody was out of Benghazi.
Okay. And yet it took another 23 days, as I understand it, to secure the compound after the attack had completed, had ended. So why did it take 23 days to secure the compound?
Senator, we were not requested to secure that compound. When the FBI decided to go in and then requested us to provide security, we did.
After the FBI requested that at that
That's
point?
Correct.
But again, going back to the early morning hours, Benghazi time, when there was still fighting going on, how did you know that that was the end of it? Or are you saying it didn't matter at that point because you had removed all the Americans from the compound and from the annex?
What I've said, Senator, is that when we put the forces in motion, they continued in motion until they arrived at the location.
At what point did you put them in motion?
Immediately, but there's notification to lift off, and then there's transit time, and it was a significant amount of time.
Had they been on alert or at a higher state of alert, could you perhaps have gotten them there faster?
I think, yes, they could have. We've routinely leave forces at N+6. Some of them are N+4. Some of them are at N+2. no one is ever sitting there on the tarmac waiting, but we do dial up and dial down the alert posture.
Looking back, given that it was an important anniversary of 9/11, was there good reason to have put them at a higher state of alert than they were?
Well, looking back is a lot clearer than looking forward. And I will tell you that as part of this study that the SecDef described, we have changed our alert posture globally. The question is whether we can sustain it over time. It's challenging to sustain those kind of alert postures.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator